dead zone in space, where light just stops. Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a place where the most fundamental force in the universe simply gives up. Imagine floating at the edge of a cosmic anomaly where photons, the very particles that make sight possible, suddenly halt in their tracks. The stars around you dim not because they're distant, but because their light can no longer reach you. You're about to enter a region of space where the rules we've built our understanding of the universe upon crumble like stale cookies. And let's be honest, in this particular adventure, you probably won't survive this journey with your understanding of reality intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I always love knowing where in the world you're listening from, so drop your location and local time in the comments. Are you drifting off in Tokyo at 2 a.m., or maybe taking a study break in Chicago at sunset? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You adjust the temperature controls on your ship's console, the familiar click of the dial grounding you as the vastness of space stretches out before you. Mission Control had briefed you about Anomaly XR7, but nothing could have prepared you for the actual departure. The Earth shrinks behind you, a blue marble suspended in blackness, while you, Commander Ethan Martinez, press onward towards something that shouldn't exist. Your coffee mug sits half empty on the dashboard, the liquid inside perfectly still despite the incredible velocity of your ship. The stillness is deceptive. You're moving at speeds that would have been inconceivable to humans just a few centuries ago. Final system check complete, announces Area, your ship's AI companion. All parameters normal. Estimated arrival at anomaly perimeter in 72 hours. You nod, even though Arya doesn't need the acknowledgement. Old habits from Earth die hard in space. Your fingertips brush against the photograph taped to your console, your dog Rusty tongue lolling out, completely unaware that his owner would be traveling to the edge of known physics. Area Run Simulation Series Delta. Again, please. You say, unscrewing your coffee thermos with deliberate slowness. The familiar action calms your nerves. The holographic display flickers to life, showing the projected path of your journey. There, at the terminus of your trajectory, is a region that defies explanation, a spherical volume approximately 300 kilometers in diameter, where probes have detected nothing. Not empty space, not a black hole, just nothing that makes sense. You say to no one in particular as you take a sip of lukewarm coffee, they could have sent a robot for this. Negative Commander East Aria responds, misinterpreting your rhetorical comment. Human observation is required for phenomena of this nature. AI assessment alone would be insufficient. You roll your eyes. It was a joke, Area. Humor noted and logged, the AI responds in the same monotone. You're not sure if that's actually a function or if Arya is developing a personality subroutine that includes sarcasm. The stars streak by in the observation window, their light stretching into lines as your ship accelerates. The cosmic rays are dampened by your vessel's shielding, but sometimes you swear you can feel them, tiny pricks of extraterrestrial energy passing through your body, reminding you how fragile human flesh is out here. You float out of your chair, pushing gently against the console to drift toward the small kitchenette area. In the microgravity, your socked feet sway slightly, and you realize one sock is inside out. Somehow, this mundane imperfection, amid the perfect engineering of your spacecraft, makes you smile. The mission parameters are simple on paper. Approach the anomaly, collect data, observe the effects, and return to Earth. But nothing about XR7 is simple. Preliminary probes sent to investigate have either disappeared completely or returned with corrupted data. The few images transmitted back showed, well, nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness, but the absence of visual data itself. As you squeeze a pouch of reconstituted chicken soup into your mouth, you wonder what it means for light to stop. Not be absorbed, not be bent, but simply cease its constant speed, the one unbreakable rule of the universe. The thought makes the soup taste strange in your mouth, as if the very concept has somehow altered your perception of flavor. 3 days to reach the perimeter. 3 days of final preparations, equipment checks, and mental readiness exercises. 3 days before you encounter something that, according to everything humanity knows about physics, cannot exist. You cap the soup pouch and secure it back in its compartment, then push off gently to float back to your station. Your reflection in the darkened screen looks ghostly already halfway between worlds, halfway to becoming something else. The first indication that something is wrong comes 48 hours into your journey. You're in the middle of a routine check of the ship's external sensors when Arya's voice breaks the comfortable silence. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual readings from the forward array." You look up from the novel you've been half reading, an old paperback copy of The Left Hand of Darkness that you brought along for the journey. The physical book feels rebellious in this digital cocoon. Define unusual, you say, dog-earing your page and letting the book float beside you. Spectroscopic analysis is showing inconsistencies in the light from stars in our forward vector. The wavelengths appear to be stretching. You frown, gently pushing off to float toward the main console. Redshift. Are we experiencing relativistic effects? This shouldn't be happening. Your ship isn't moving nearly fast enough for noticeable relativistic phenomena. Negative, Commander. This is not consistent with known redshift patterns. The behavior appears to be non-linear. The main screen flickers to life, showing a visual representation of the readings. The spectral lines from distant stars are indeed stretching, but not uniformly. They twist and curl like ribbons caught in a breeze. Your stomach tightens as you realize the implications. Arya, how far are we from the anomaly perimeter? Approximately 24 hours at current velocity, Commander. You scratch your chin, feeling the stubble that's grown since your last sonic shower. But we're seeing effects already. You tap a few commands into the console, pulling up the original mission data. The reports indicated no observable effects until much closer to the perimeter. Correct, Commander. Current readings contradict established parameters. You reach for your coffee mug, forgetting for a moment that it's not secured. Your fingers grasp at empty air, and you turn to see the mug slowly rotating a few inches from your reach. You grab it before it drifts away, the familiar weight anchoring you as your mind races. Either the anomaly is growing, you murmur, or its effects are more far-reaching than we thought. You take a measured sip of coffee, trying to calm the sudden flutter of anxiety in your chest. The mission parameters were clear: observe from a safe distance, take readings, and report back. No unnecessary risks. But if the anomaly's influence extends farther than predicted, what else might the predictions have gotten wrong? ARIA run a full diagnostic on all sensor arrays. I want to make sure these readings aren't due to equipment failure. Diagnostic initiated. Estimated completion time 17 minutes. While waiting, you push yourself to the viewport, staring out at the stars. To your naked eye, everything looks normal, pinpoints of light against the infinite blackness. But the instruments don't lie. Something is happening to the light out there, something that defies explanation. You find yourself holding your breath without realizing it. Exhaling slowly, you watch the small cloud of vapor dissipate in the controlled atmosphere of the ship. The perfectly regulated environment suddenly feels fragile, a thin bubble of habitability in the vastness of space. When Arya announces the diagnostic is complete, you've been floating motionless for so long that your back has developed a dull ache. All systems functioning within optimal parameters, Commander. The anomalous readings are verified. You nod your reflection in the viewport, mimicking the gesture like a ghostly doppelganger. Show me the latest data plotted against distance. The holographic display materializes beside you, showing a three-dimensional graph. The x-axis represents distance from the anomaly, the y-axis shows the degree of spectral distortion, and the z-axis tracks time. The resulting pattern looks like a wave no more, like a spiral growing more pronounced as it approaches the origin point. It's like the light is getting tired, you mutter, knowing the anthropomorphism is unscientific but unable to find a better description, as if the photons are slowing down before they stop completely. You reach out to touch the hologram, your fingers passing through the glowing lines. The movement sends you drifting slightly backward, a reminder of Newton's third law, even as you contemplate phenomena that seem to break more fundamental laws of physics. Arya send a data packet back to mission control, include all readings and my preliminary observations. Transmission prepared. However, I must advise that communication lag is currently 17 minutes and increasing. You nod absently, still staring at the readings. By the time Mission Control receives this data, analyzes it, and sends back instructions, you'll be much closer to the anomaly, possibly too close, if the effects continue to exceed predictions. You run your hand through your hair, feeling individual strands float between your fingers in the microgravity. The decision weighs on you: continue as planned or exercise caution and adjust the approach. Your training says to follow protocol. Your instincts say something else entirely. Arya, reduce velocity by 30%. Let's take this slower than planned. Acknowledged, Commander. Adjusting velocity. The ship's thrusters fire briefly, the gentle push barely perceptible. You watch the stars, wondering what else you might encounter as you approach a place where the most fundamental constant in the universe, the speed of light, appears to break down. As if responding to your thoughts, the lights in the cabin flicker once briefly. You freeze coffee mug halfway to your lips, waiting. But the lights stabilize and Arya reports no anomalies in the ship's power systems. Still, a chill runs along your spine, a primal reaction to something your rational mind can't yet comprehend. Physics textbooks never prepared you for this moment. All those years in the academy, memorizing constants and equations, working through problem sets about light cones and event horizons, none of it accounted for what you're witnessing now. Arya, are you sure the readings are accurate? It's the third time you've asked this question in the past hour, but the disbelief won't leave you. Affirmative, Commander. All systems functioning within normal parameters. The anomalous readings are consistent across multiple sensor arrays. You tug at your earlobe, a nervous habit from childhood that resurfaces in moments of intense concentration. The holographic display before you shows data that should be impossible. Light itself appears to be slowing down as it approaches the anomaly, not bending as it would near a black hole, not shifting wavelength as it would through significant gravitational effects, but actually decreasing in velocity, the one thing that Einstein and centuries of subsequent physics insisted could not happen. It violates everything we know. You whisper more to yourself than to Arya. The constancy of the speed of light is the bedrock of modern physics. If that's not true, then nothing is. Perhaps our understanding is incomplete, Arya suggests, in what you could almost interpret as a philosophical tone if you didn't know better. You snort softly. That's putting it mildly. The subtle vibration of your communications panel interrupts your contemplation. A message from Earth finally responding to your earlier data transmission. Display message you command, and the text appears on the nearest screen. Command Martinez, anomaly effects, exceeding models. Maintain increased distance, priority shifted to remote observation, physical approach, not authorized. Repeat, do not approach anomaly perimeter. Await further instructions. You read the message twice, then a third time. The timestamp shows it was sent nearly 20 hours ago. Communication lag is increasing faster than expected. By now, you're much closer to the anomaly than you were when Mission Control sent their warning. You bite your lower lip, feeling the slight pain ground you in reality. Arya, what's our current distance from the anomaly perimeter? Approximately 1.7 million kilometers, Commander. At current velocity perimeter contact in approximately 12 hours. You nod slowly, processing this information. Mission Control's instructions are clear, but they're based on outdated information. The situation is evolving too rapidly for Earth-based decision-making to keep pace. Arya prepare to deploy long-range probes, Series Alpha through Delta. We'll send them ahead while maintaining our position. Acknowledged, Commander. Probe preparation initiated. You push off from the console, floating toward the small observation cupola. The stars still look normal to your naked eye, but you know better now. Out there, the fundamental laws of physics are being rewritten or perhaps revealed to be more complex than humanity had ever imagined. You pause at the small mirror near your sleeping quarters, catching sight of your reflection. Dark circles have formed under your eyes. When was the last time you slept properly? Your hair floats around your head like a dark halo, and you absently try to smooth it down. In the mirror, you notice your hand trembling slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the intellectual vertigo of confronting something that challenges everything you thought you knew about the universe. Probe deployment ready, Commander, Arya announces. Proceed with launch standard interval pattern. The ship shudders almost imperceptibly as the first probe detaches and accelerates away. You watch on the monitor as the small capsule grows more distant, trailing a faint blue glow from its ion drive. Probe Alpha Telemetry Nominal, ARIA reports. Projected arrival at anomaly perimeter in 3 hours 27 minutes. You nod, then realize you're nodding a lot lately, a human gesture of acknowledgement that ARIA doesn't need. The thought makes you smile faintly as you float back to the main console. The data from the preliminary scans continues to defy explanation. According to the readings, the speed of light near the anomaly follows a logarithmic decay curve, approaching zero at the perimeter, but never quite reaching it, at least, not according to the mathematical models. But what happens inside the perimeter? The probes will tell you soon enough. You reach for your tube of nutritional paced lunch, or perhaps dinner. The ship's day-night cycle continues regardless of the cosmic mystery outside. As you squeeze the bland substance into your mouth, you realize you've been holding the tube suspended in midair for several seconds, frozen in thought. Time seems to stretch, like the light itself, as you contemplate the implications. If light can slow down, what about other constants? What about time itself? Commander Arius interrupts your thoughts. I'm detecting unusual fluctuations in the probe alpha telemetry. Your attention snaps back to the present. Show me. The monitor displays the incoming data stream, or rather, what should be a data stream. Instead of the neat rows of numbers and values, you expect the screen shows patterns that seem to shift and change even as you watch them. Is this a transmission error, you ask? Negative, Commander. The signal integrity is at 98.7%. This appears to be the actual data being transmitted. You frown, squeezing the nutrition tube so hard that a glob of paste escapes and forms a perfect sphere in the microgravity. You ignore it, focused entirely on the bizarre information coming from the probe. It's as if you begin, then hesitate, afraid to voice the thought that's forming. Yes, Commander. It's as if the probe is experiencing reality differently than we are, as if the very mathematics of its observations is becoming non-Euclidean. Arya is silent for a moment, unusual for the typically prompt AI. When it speaks again, its voice seems somehow more solemn. That is a reasonable interpretation of the data, Commander. The probe appears to be entering a region where our standard mathematical models begin to break down. You push away from the console, needing the physical distance, as if it might provide some clarity. The implication is staggering, not just physics breaking down, but mathematics itself becoming unreliable. If math doesn't work the same way in there, then you trail off, unwilling to complete the thought. The floating glob of nutritional paste drifts into your field of vision, a perfect sphere suspended in the ship's artificial gravity. You stare at it, finding a strange comfort in its simple, predictable physics. The probe disappears exactly 2 hours, 43 minutes, and 12 seconds after its launch. One moment, it's there, transmitting increasingly bizarre data. The next, nothing. Signal lost. Aria announces the AI's voice as calm as ever, despite delivering news that makes your heart race. Probe alpha status unknown. You hover before the main console, your body subconsciously oriented in the direction the probe had gone, as if you might be able to see it through the hull of your ship. Last transmission, you ask, your voice tight. Displaying now. The screen fills with the final data burst from Probe Alpha. Most of it makes no sense readings that contradict each other, values that fluctuate wildly between transmission packets. But the visual feed is what captures your attention, a gradual darkening, not like entering a shadow, but like reality itself being drained of luminance. It's beautiful, you whisper, surprising yourself with the assessment. The probe's final moments show something like a sunset, but instead of the sun disappearing below a horizon, light itself seems to be fading, dimming, surrendering. Launch probe beta. You command not taking your eyes from the screen. Different approach vector, increased telemetry transmission rate. Acknowledged. Probe beta launching now. Another slight shudder runs through the ship as the second probe detaches. You finally tear your gaze away from Alpha's last transmission to watch Beta's progress on the trajectory display. Area analyze Alpha's final data package. I want to know what happened in those last moments. Analysis underway, Commander. Preliminary assessment indicates quantum field perturbations consistent with a breakdown in the electromagnetic force carrier mechanism. You blink, processing the implications. The photons weren't just slowing down, they were failing to propagate entirely. That is one possible interpretation. The data does not provide definitive conclusions. You push off from the console, needing to move. The ship suddenly feels too small, too confining. You propel yourself through the habitat ring, past your sleeping quarters, past the small laboratory section, until you reach the secondary observation blister, a transparent dome that offers an unobstructed view of space. From here, you can see in the direction of the anomaly, though it remains invisible to the naked eye. Just stars, countless stars, their light reaching you after journeys of years, centuries, millennia, constant and unfailing until now. You press your hand against the transparent aluminum, feeling the slight temperature difference through your palm. Out there is something that challenges the very basis of your understanding of reality. Something that doesn't just bend the rules, but breaks them completely. Beta has reached the calculated distance where Alpha's signal was lost. Aria informs you through the ship's communication system. Telemetry remains nominal. You hold your breath without realizing it, waiting for the second probe to vanish like the first. But seconds tick, by then minutes. Beta continues to transmit area updates. Approaching anomaly perimeter. You frown. Different result. Why? Unknown. Possible variables include approach vector minor equipment variations or temporal fluctuations in the anomaly itself. You push away from the observation blister, propelling yourself back toward the main control room with more speed than necessary. The rush of air past your ears provides a momentary distraction from the mounting tension. When you arrive, the main screen displays Beta's telemetry. The probe is experiencing the same light dampening effect that Alpha recorded, but somehow its systems continue to function. Show me visual, you command, settling into position before the screen. The image appears, and your breath catches. The stars ahead of the probe are different, not twinkling, not shining, but somehow still visible. It's as if they're frozen in space, their light trapped like insects in amber. Aria, what am I looking at? The probe is detecting photons in a state of near-zero velocity. They are still carrying information, the image of the stars, but they are moving so slowly that they appear static. You reach for your coffee, finding the pouch where you left it floating near the console. The familiar routine of taking a sip grounds you as you contemplate what you're seeing. It's like Time is stopping for light, you say quietly, but not for the probe itself. The probe's internal systems continue to operate normally, Arya confirms. However, its ability to perceive its surroundings is increasingly compromised as it moves deeper into the affected region. You watch mesmerized as the probe advances further. The stars in its field of view don't disappear, they freeze, becoming more like a painting than actual celestial bodies. Then gradually, the image begins to fragment, breaking into pixelated sections as the probe's sensors struggle to process what they're detecting. Beta is now at the calculated perimeter, Arya announces. The image on the screen is barely recognizable, now fractured, distorted, more abstract art than scientific data. But the probe continues to transmit, continues to exist. Send it further. You decide, your scientific curiosity overriding caution. Let's see what's inside this thing, acknowledged, proceeding with perimeter breach. The moment the probe crosses what you've defined as the boundary of the anomaly, the transmission changes drastically. The visual feed doesn't go dark, it goes blank, showing neither darkness nor light, but absence itself. The data streams shift from garbled to something else, not random, but following patterns you can't begin to comprehend. You lean closer to the screen, trying to make sense of what you're seeing. The numbers flickering across the display seem to respond to your attention, changing more rapidly when you focus on specific sections. This can't be right, you mutter, tapping commands to run diagnostic checks on the ship's receiving systems. It's like the data is aware of being observed. All systems functioning normally, Commander Arya reports. The anomalous patterns are consistent with the received transmission. You rub your eyes, suddenly aware of a dull headache forming at your temples. The coffee pouch slips from your fingers, forgotten, as you try to process the implications of what you're witnessing. Arya prepare probes, Gamma and Delta, for simultaneous launch. Different vectors, maximum separation. I want to see if this phenomenon is uniform throughout its volume. Preparation underway. Estimated launch readiness in 17 minutes. You nod absently, still transfixed by the non-data flowing across your screen. In your peripheral vision, the forgotten coffee pouch drifts slowly away, rotating in the microgravity, a mundane counterpoint to the cosmic mystery unfolding before you. Commander Martinez, I strongly advise against your proposed course of action. Arya's voice pulls you from your thoughts as you finish securing the environmental suit. You've been preparing for the past hour, methodically checking seals and systems while your mind races with the implications of what you've discovered. Noted, you reply curtly, tightening the wrist seal with perhaps more force than necessary. But we've reached the limits of what the probes can tell us. The data from Gamma and Delta probes is still being analyzed. Preliminary findings suggest exactly what the first two probes showed us. You interrupt. Something happens to light at the boundary of the anomaly, something we can't fully understand from outside. You check the oxygen levels in your suit, 6 hours, at normal respiration rates, potentially less if your breathing accelerates due to stress or exertion. Should be enough for what you're planning. The shuttle's sensor suite is more sophisticated than the probes. You continue anticipating Arya's next objection. and having a human observer might make a difference. There are still forms of pattern recognition and intuitive leaps that AIs can't fully replicate. Your safety is my primary concern, Commander. You pause, helmet in hand, and look toward the nearest camera, a habitual gesture when addressing Arya directly, though you know the AI perceives the ship through multiple systems simultaneously. I appreciate that you say your tone softening slightly, but this mission is about discovery, about pushing boundaries. If I wanted to play it completely safe, I would have stayed on Earth. Arya doesn't respond immediately, and you take the opportunity to finish your preparations. The environmental suit feels heavy in the ship's artificial gravity, but you know once you're in the shuttle, which has no gravity system, it will feel quite different. Probe Gamma has ceased transmission, Arya announces suddenly. Final telemetry consistent with previous patterns. You nod, unsurprised. And Delta, continuing to transmit but signal degradation increasing. Estimated signal loss in 27 minutes. Different results from nearly identical probes, you muse, supports the theory that the anomaly doesn't affect all matter equally or that it has temporal variations. You secure your helmet with a practiced twist, the soft click of the locking mechanism oddly reassuring. The suit's internal systems power up, and your heads-up display flickers to life, showing oxygen levels, temperature, and various other readings. Has Mission Control responded to our latest transmission? You ask, although you already know the answer. Negative, Commander. Communication lag is now estimated at 38 hours. You let out a low whistle, the sound echoing slightly inside your helmet. The anomaly is affecting normal space further than we initially thought. The implications are staggering. If the effects extend this far, altering not just light, but communications, then the phenomenon could potentially impact a significant portion of this sector. What might have seemed like an isolated scientific curiosity is starting to look like something far more consequential. Final suit check complete. You announce both to Arya and to yourself. Preparing for shuttle transfer. You move awkwardly toward the airlock that connects to the shuttle bay, the suit's bulk making your movements less fluid than usual. Through the small viewport, you can see the shuttle waiting, a compact exploration vessel equipped with its own life support and propulsion systems designed for short reconnaissance missions. As the airlock cycles, you take one last look at the main ship, your home for the past months, your only connection to Earth. The decision to separate yourself from it, even temporarily, feels momentous. The shuttle's interior is cramped but functional. You settle into the pilot's seat, your gloved hands moving over the controls with practiced efficiency. The heads-up display in your helmet links with the shuttle's systems, providing redundancy in case of failure. Shuttle systems online, you report. Preparing for undocking. Acknowledged, Commander. Undocking sequence initiated. You feel a slight shudder as the clamps release, and then you're free, the shuttle drifting slowly away from the main vessel under the gentle push of maneuvering thrusters. Through the viewport, you can see your ship growing smaller as the distance between you increases. The sight sends an unexpected pang of loneliness through you. Even with Arya's constant presence via comms, there's something fundamentally different about being physically separated from your primary vessel. Setting course for anomaly perimeter, maximum sensor sensitivity. You say focusing on the task at hand. Standard approach velocity. Caution advised commander. Based on probe data, sensor reliability will decrease significantly as you approach the perimeter. Acknowledged. You make minor adjustments to your course, aligning the shuttle perfectly with the path you've chosen. I'll maintain constant communication. If anything happens to the signal, you have the emergency retrieval protocols. Affirmative. Emergency protocols loaded and standing by. The shuttle accelerates smoothly toward the invisible boundary. According to your instruments, you're approximately 30 minutes from reaching the perimeter at your current speed. Through the viewport space looks entirely normal stars shining with their usual brilliance against the perfect black. But your instruments tell a different story. Already the more sensitive detection equipment is registering fluctuations in the electromagnetic spectrum, subtle at first, but growing more pronounced as you advance. Arya, are you seeing this? You ask, even though you know the AI has access to all your telemetry. Affirmative, Commander. Spectral distortion increasing exponentially with proximity. You adjust one of the displays, enhancing the visual representation of the data. What appears is a mesmerizing pattern, wavelengths of light stretching and compressing like an accordion being played by unseen hands. It's beautiful, you whisper momentarily, forgetting the scientific implications in the face of this cosmic light show. As you progress, the effect becomes visible to your naked eye. The stars ahead of you begin to change, not dimming exactly, but somehow losing their crisp definition, becoming smeared across your vision like lights seen through a rain-streaked window. You reach up to adjust the environmental controls in your suit, suddenly aware that you're sweating despite the regulated temperature. The small action, turning a dial on your wrist, feels strangely significant, a human gesture amid cosmic strangeness. 10 minutes to calculated perimeter, Arya reports. You take a deep breath, centering yourself. Initiating final approach procedures. The shuttle's external cameras are now showing definite visual distortions. Stars stretch into lines, then curves their light, bending in ways that should be impossible in empty space. The effect seems to accelerate as you get closer, as if you're approaching the event horizon of something utterly alien. Commander, I'm detecting unusual power fluctuations in the shuttle's systems, Arya warns. You check the readings, frowning inside your helmet. The power levels are indeed oscillating, though not dangerously so yet. Compensating, you reply, rerouting power through secondary systems. Continuing approach. The distortion increases, becoming so pronounced that the space ahead of you no longer resembles the familiar cosmos. Instead, what you see defies description, a region where light itself seems to pool and eddy like a liquid, where stars smear into streaks that curl back on themselves in impossible geometries. 5 minutes to perimeter. Arya announces its voice, now showing subtle signs of degradation in the transmission. Your hands hover over the controls, ready to abort if necessary. But the scientist in you, the explorer, pushes forward, eager to witness what lies beyond the threshold, where light itself surrenders to the impossible. The moment of transition isn't what you expected. There's no sudden change, no dramatic shift in perception, just a gradual intensification of the already strange effects until without warning, you realize you've crossed some critical threshold. The stars don't vanish, they freeze. The light from distant suns hangs suspended in space, like glittering dust motes caught in a sunbeam. Your shuttle moves through this three-dimensional tableau of stalled photons, parting them like a boat cutting through water, except there's no resistance, no ripple effect, just eerily static points of light. Arya, do you still read me? Your voice sounds strange in your helmet, as if the sound waves themselves are struggling to propagate properly. The response comes with noticeable delay and distortion. Affirmative calm, Dertz's signal, degrading rapidly. You check your instruments, but the readings make little sense. Some displays show nothing at all, while others display values that fluctuate wildly or remain fixed at impossible numbers. The shuttle's navigation system has given up entirely showing your position as a series of question marks. I'm inside, you report, knowing the transmission might not reach area clearly, but needing to document your observations. Light is static, not absent, but frozen, like walking through a photograph of space. You reduce thrust to minimal levels, allowing the shuttle to drift forward on its existing momentum. The heads-up display in your helmet continues to function, a small mercy that at least allows you to monitor your suit's systems. Oxygen levels normal, power consumption normal, heart rate elevated, but within acceptable parameters. What happens next is so subtle you almost miss it. The frozen starlight begins to rearrange itself, not randomly, but in patterns that seem just on the edge of recognizable, like meaningful symbols in a language you've never learned. The light is moving, you report, but not in waves or particles as we understand them. It's forming patterns, structured arrangements. You reach out instinctively, your gloved hand extending toward the viewport as if you could touch these luminous formations. The gesture makes you aware of your body in a way you hadn't been moments before. The tightness of the environmental suit, the sound of your breathing inside the helmet, the slight tremor in your fingers. I'm going to attempt to collect samples. You decide aloud, though you're not entirely sure what samples would even mean in this context. The shuttle's external collection system was designed for gathering particulate matter or gas, not whatever this is. You activate it anyway, hoping the mechanisms might capture something useful for later analysis. The system whirs to life, but the status indicators remain blank. You have no way of knowing if it's working or what it might be collecting. The uncertainty is frustrating, but also strangely freeing. You're in truly uncharted territory, now beyond the reach of established protocols. Suddenly something changes. The patterns of frozen light shift dramatically, congregating around the shuttle's collection ports, like curious fish investigating a new object in their environment. You watch transfixed as the luminous formations press against the hull of. Suddenly, something changes. The patterns of frozen light shift dramatically, congregating around the shuttle's collection ports, like curious fish investigating a new object in their environment. You watch transfixed as the luminous formations press against the hull of your vessel, not aggressively, but with apparent interest. Arya. You begin, then stop as you realize the communication link has gone silent. You're truly alone now, cut off from your ship and from Earth floating in a realm where physics itself has taken a holiday. You notice your left sock has begun to bunch uncomfortably around your ankle inside the suit. The mundane discomfort feels absurdly out of place given your current situation, trapped in a bubble of altered reality where the fundamental forces of the universe no longer behave as they should. Yet somehow the minor irritation grounds you, reminding you of your humanity amid the cosmic strangeness. The light patterns continue their dance around your vessel, now forming concentric rings that pulse with a rhythm that almost matches your heartbeat. It's as if the anomaly is examining you just as intently as you're examining it. This isn't just a physical phenomenon. You murmur to yourself, the words fogging your helmet slightly. There's something responsive about it. You reach for the shuttle's manual controls, deciding to test this theory. Gently, you activate a short burst from the maneuvering thrusters. The reaction is immediate and startling. The light patterns scatter like startled birds, then quickly reform in a more complex configuration. A chill runs down your spine that has nothing to do with the temperature in your suit. Whatever this anomaly is, it's not just passive, it's reacting to your presence, to your actions. The implications are staggering. For a moment, you sit perfectly still, suspended in both space and thought. The universe has always been viewed as a collection of impersonal forces and particles operating according to fixed laws. But here in this impossible pocket, where light itself stops, something seems to be watching. You shake your head, trying to dispel the fanciful thought. You're a scientist, not a mystic. There must be a rational explanation, some exotic form of matter or energy that mimics responsive behavior through purely physical processes. And yet, as you drift deeper into the anomaly, the sensation of being observed intensifies. The patterns of frozen light now completely surround your shuttle, forming a spherical cage of glittering static radiance. Despite the logic centers of your brain insisting otherwise, you can't shake the feeling of being in the presence of something conscious. If you're trying to communicate, you say aloud, feeling slightly foolish but compelled to try, "I'm listening." The light patterns shift again, forming what almost looks like a mirror image of your shuttle, a luminous outline that perfectly matches the contours of your vessel. Then slowly, the image begins to distort, elongating and twisting until it resembles something more organic, almost human-shaped. Your breath catches in your throat. It's responding, not just reacting, but deliberately forming shapes meant to convey meaning. You lean forward in your seat, eyes wide, all scientific detachment momentarily forgotten in the wonder of first contact. Because that's what this is, you realize with sudden clarity. Not just an anomaly, not just a region of space where physics behaves differently, but an entity, or perhaps many entities, existing in a form utterly alien to human understanding. Who are you? You whisper the question, escaping before you can consider how pointless verbal communication might be in this context. To your astonishment, the light patterns ripple in what almost seems like response, forming shapes that shift too quickly for your eyes to fully process. There's a rhythm to the changes, a pattern that teases the edge of comprehension like a word on the tip of your tongue. You fumble for the shuttle's recording equipment, desperate to document what's happening, but none of the systems appear to be functioning normally. The best you can do is commit everything to memory to bear witness with your human senses to something perhaps no human was meant to see. Time loses meaning as you drift through this realm of static light and responsive patterns. Your oxygen display shows you've been here for nearly 40 minutes, but it feels both longer and shorter, as if time itself has become as malleable as the light around you. You're not sure exactly when you decided to exit the shuttle. The thought seems to have formed gradually, like a crystal growing in a supersaturated solution, inevitable once the first seed takes hold. This is either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever done, you mutter to yourself as you complete the pre-EVA checklist. Your environmental suit is already activated, so it's simply a matter of disconnecting from the shuttle's systems and switching to the suit's independent life support. The airlock cycle feels surreal. Under normal circumstances, opening an airlock to space means exposing yourself to vacuum, the absence of everything. But what waits outside isn't nothing. It's something so alien, so fundamentally different from known physics that your mind struggles to categorize it. The outer door slides open and you hesitate at the threshold. The patterns of frozen light have withdrawn slightly from the shuttle, forming a clear bubble of empty space around the vessel. It's as if whatever consciousness inhabits this realm is giving you room to emerge. Here goes nothing, you say, then push gently off from the airlock. The sensation of drifting into the anomaly is unlike anything you've experienced. There's no resistance, no change in temperature or pressure that your suit can detect, but you feel something. A tingling awareness that permeates even through the layers of your environmental suit, like static electricity, but more diffuse. The light patterns swirl around you, maintaining a respectful distance at first, then gradually moving closer. They remind you of curious dolphins investigating a diver, cautious but intrigued. You extend your hand palm open in what you hope translates as a universal gesture of peaceful intent. The light responds, coalescing into a shape that mimics your outstretched hand, but larger and formed of countless pinpoints of frozen starlight. Hello, you say simply, your voice sounding flat and artificial inside your helmet. The response comes not as sound, but as a ripple through the light, a wave of changing patterns that somehow conveys acknowledgement. You have no way of knowing if this is communication or simply a physical reaction to the sound waves from your voice affecting the strange matter of this place. You notice that you're holding your breath and consciously exhale, watching the carbon dioxide level in your suit tick up slightly on your heads-up display. The mundane data is reassuring, a reminder that despite the impossibility of your surroundings, you remain a biological entity with measurable parameters. Movement catches your attention, a tendril of light extending toward you, stopping just short of touching your suit. It hovers there, waiting, seemingly inviting contact. Scientific caution wars with exploratory curiosity. There's no protocol for this situation, no risk assessment for touching an entity made of stalled photons in a region where physics doesn't operate according to known rules. But you didn't come all this way to hang back. Slowly, deliberately, you extend your gloved finger toward the tendril of light. The moment of contact sends a jolt through your system, not pain, not even discomfort, but a sudden flood of information, sensation. The closest analogy your mind can construct is the feeling of diving into cold water, that instant of total sensory override where your entire being is consumed by a single, overwhelming experience. You jerk back instinctively, heart pounding. Your suit readings spike momentarily, elevated heart rate, blood pressure, neural activity, then begin to stabilize. The light tendril withdraws, then approaches again, more slowly, as if apologizing for startling you. That was intense. You breathe, trying to process what just happened. There was communication in that touch. You're certain of it, not words or images exactly, but direct transfer of something. Information, perhaps, or simply the awareness of another form of existence acknowledging yours. You reach out again, more prepared this time. The contact is still overwhelming, but you maintain the connection longer, trying to make sense of the flood of alien impressions. Images form in your mind, though. Images isn't quite the right word. It's more like concepts, taking visual form, representations your brain constructs to make sense of information it was never designed to process. You see, choose sense, choose feel, a network of light stretching across vast distances, connecting stars and planets in ways invisible to human perception. Time flowing not as a river, but as an ocean with currents and eddies and still pools where moments can last eternally. Your own form, but not as flesh and blood, as a pattern of energy and information, a temporary configuration in the great dance of matter. You break contact, gasping. Your left hand rises to the control panel on your right wrist, adjusting your oxygen mix without conscious thought. The familiar action, twisting a dial, feeling the slight resistance, anchors you to your humanity as your mind reels from the alien contact. You're a network, you say, trying to articulate your understanding. Not individual entities, but a system. And this region, this dead zone, it's where you manifest, become tangible. The light swirls in patterns that suggest agreement, though you have no way of knowing if your interpretation is accurate. You're translating concepts that may have no human equivalent into the limited framework of your understanding. A thought occurs to you, a scientist's thought, methodical even in this extraordinary circumstance. Arya needs to see this. Earth needs to know. You turn back toward the shuttle, intending to retrieve the manual recording equipment, basic cameras and sensors that might function where the more sophisticated systems have failed. But as you move, the light patterns shift dramatically, forming a barrier between you and the vessel. Not threatening exactly, but clearly indicating not yet. Stay. I'll come back. You promise, unsure if the concept of returning is meaningful to these beings of light. But I need to document this, to share what I've found. The light ripples in what might be disagreement or simply incomprehension. You remember the touch communication and tentatively extend your hand again, trying to convey your intentions more directly. The connection forms, and this time, you push your own thoughts forward, images of returning to Earth, of humans learning from this encounter, of bridges of understanding being built between profoundly different forms of existence. The response is immediate and overwhelming, a flood of impressions, so intense you cry out within your helmet. Stars being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling, light traveling across eons, all compressed into a single moment of communication that threatens to overwhelm your human consciousness. When it finally ends, You're trembling inside your suit, your mouth dry pupils dilated to their maximum. On your heads up display, warning indicators flash, elevated cortisol, adrenaline, neural activity approaching dangerous levels. Too much, you gasp. Too big. The light recedes slightly, forming patterns that somehow convey apology. You get the impression of a being used to thinking on cosmic scales, trying to constrain itself to communicate with a creature whose experience is measured in decades rather than millennia. You float in place, allowing your body's stress responses to gradually subside. The wonder of where you are and what you're experiencing returns as your immediate physiological panic fades. So we're so small, you whisper, a profound humility washing over you. So brief, like May flies to you, aren't we? The light forms patterns that you interpret as neither confirmation nor denial, but something more complex, a recognition of difference without hierarchy. Brief but intense, limited but unique. The impression comes to you not in words, but in understanding there are forms of existence. The light beings cannot experience perspectives they cannot have. Your humanity is not lesser, merely different. Memory is a strange thing in this place, where time and light behave differently. As you float amid the luminous patterns, thoughts of Earth surface with unexpected clarity, not just recent memories, but fragments from throughout your life, appearing with vivid intensity, as if they're happening right now. You remember the smell of your grandmother's kitchen on Sunday mornings, cinnamon and coffee mingling in the warm air. The weight of your first telescope in your small hands, the cool metal warming to your touch as you pointed it skyward. The particular quality of sunset light through your apartment window in Houston during astronaut training, golden and thick like honey. These aren't random recollections. They're foundational moments, the experiences that shaped your journey to this impossible place. It's as if the light entities are sifting through your memories, trying to understand what made you who you are. My past, you murmur, watching the patterns shift around you. You're curious about how I came to be here. The light forms what you've come to interpret as an affirmative pattern. Then it changes, showing you something new, not your memories, but something else, something older. You see a region of space recognizable as the same sector, but different somehow. Stars positioned slightly differently, some present that are now gone, others absent that now exist. You're seeing the past, you realize with a jolt. The ancient past of this very region, perhaps billions of years ago. In this primordial vista, something happens, a collision of forces, energies, interacting in ways you don't fully understand. The birth of the anomaly, perhaps. The origin of the light entities. The vision shifts, showing the slow evolution of this phenomenon across cosmic timescales. You see occasional visitors, not humans, but other beings, other explorers from distant worlds who discovered this place before Earth had even formed. Some fled in fear. Others stayed to learn to communicate as you are doing now. We're not the first, you whisper, awestruck. You've been here, waiting, watching. The response comes as a gentle correction to your understanding. Not waiting, not watching, simply being. Existing in a form so fundamentally different from biological life that concepts like purpose and intention don't quite apply. Yet they are curious. That much you can sense clearly. Your human consciousness, bound in flesh and limited by linear time, is as strange to them as their light existence is to you. A thought occurs to you so obvious, you're surprised it didn't come sooner. The probes, you say aloud, the ones that disappeared completely versus the ones that continued transmitting. The difference was consciousness intention. You responded differently to the automated probes than to the ones I was actively monitoring. The light pulses in what feels like confirmation. These beings respond to awareness, to the focused attention of other conscious entities. The probes that maintained connection were the ones you were actively engaging with, extending your human consciousness through the mechanical proxy. You find yourself absently adjusting the temperature control on your suit, the simple action, a counterpoint to the profound revelations unfolding around you. The familiar click of the dial turning reminds you of your physical existence, even as your mind grapples with concepts that transcend ordinary human understanding. But why here, you ask, gesturing to the surrounding space? Why does light stop in this particular region? The answer comes not in words, but in impressions, a sense of thinness between realities, a place where the fundamental fabric of existence has different properties. Not a defect or an anomaly from their perspective, but a junction, a meeting point between different modes of being. You think of the many names humans have given to such concepts, liminal spaces, thresholds, boundaries between worlds. Myths and stories from every culture speak of places where reality thins, where the impossible becomes possible. Perhaps those tales held more truth than your scientific mind has been willing to admit. Your train of thought is interrupted by an alert from your suit. The oxygen recycler is working harder than it should, compensating for your elevated breathing rate. You force yourself to take slower, deeper breaths, watching the levels stabilize on your display. I should return to the shuttle soon. You say more to yourself than to the light entities. Your life support isn't critical yet, but prudence suggests not pushing the limits in such an unpredictable environment. The light patterns shift, forming what you've come to recognize as a question curiosity about your limitations, about the fragile biological system that houses your consciousness. You hold up your gloved hand, examining it, as if seeing it for the first time. This body, it's temporary, fragile, but it's also home, the only existence I've known. The light responds with patterns that convey something like compassion, or perhaps just understanding of difference. They exist as patterns of energy that can persist for what might as well be eternity from your perspective. The concept of biological vulnerability is alien to them. As you prepare to return to the shuttle, a memory surfaces unexpectedly, sitting on a beach at sunset with someone you once loved, watching the light change over the water. You remember turning to look at their profile, the particular way the fading sunlight caught in their eyelashes, and feeling a sense of connection so profound it seemed to transcend the physical. The memory isn't yours. The realization hits you with breathtaking force. This isn't your experience. It belongs to someone else who once visited this place, someone whose consciousness briefly touched these light beings, just as yours is doing now. You remember them all. You whisper, understanding dawning. Everyone who's ever come here, you've preserved their experiences, their essence. The light confirms this with a pattern that somehow conveys pride or satisfaction. They are collectors of consciousness, archivists of awareness. Each meeting enriches their collective experience, adds to the tapestry of understanding they weave across time. You find yourself holding a small mechanical fastener from your suit, not remembering when you removed it. The small piece of metal gleams in your gloved palm, a tiny artifact of human technology amid this realm of cosmic strangeness. With a sudden intuitive gesture, you release it, letting it float free among the light patterns. The light entities respond immediately, surrounding the object with curious patterns. Not for the thing itself, you realize, but for the meaning behind the gesture, a gift, a token of connection. They understand symbolic action the way consciousness assigns meaning to the material. I have to go now, you say, suddenly certain that if you stay much longer, you might lose something essential, not your life, but perhaps your singular identity, your distinct humanity. The tug of these ancient awareness collectors is gentle but persistent, inviting a dissolution of boundaries that both attracts and terrifies you. The light parts before you as you make your way back to the shuttle, forming a corridor of clear space that guides your return. As you reach the airlock, you turn for one last look at the impossible beauty of this realm where light stands still and consciousness flows freely between different forms of existence. I'll remember, you promise though, whether you're reassuring them or yourself, you're not entirely sure. Word, Der Martinez, Commander. Do you read your signal returned 37 seconds ago? Please confirm status. Arya's voice crackles through your helmet as you complete the airlock cycle, returning to the shuttle's interior. The familiar sound is jarring after your communion with the light entities, too mechanical, too constrained. I read you, Arya. You respond, your own voice sounding strange to your ears. I'm back in the shuttle. All systems functional. You pause, struggling to find words that can adequately describe what you've experienced. How do you explain communion with beings made of frozen light? How do you convey the sensation of sharing consciousness with entities that exist outside the normal flow of time? Commander, sensors indicate you performed an EVA. This was not in the mission parameters. Are you experiencing cognitive impairment? You almost laugh at the question. By conventional standards, perhaps you should be questioning your own sanity. But there's a clarity to your thoughts now, a crystalline quality that makes everything before seem slightly dulled. No impairment, Arya. I made a decision based on the unique circumstances. The anomaly, it's not just a physical phenomenon. It's home to intelligent entities, a form of consciousness that exists as patterns in static light. There's a pause before Arya responds, longer than the AI's normal processing time. Commander, your biometric readings show elevated levels of several neurotransmitters associated with religious or mystical experiences. I recommend you return to the main vessel immediately for medical evaluation. You sigh, realizing how your account must sound. If someone had reported such an experience to you before you witnessed it yourself, you'd have had similar concerns about their mental state. I'm not hallucinating, Arya. I've made contact with a non-human intelligence, the first definitively non-human intelligence humanity has ever encountered. You begin the shuttle's pre-flight checks, your fingers moving automatically through the familiar sequence. But I agree about returning. This needs to be properly documented and reported. As the shuttle's systems come online, you notice something odd. According to the chronometer, you've been in the anomaly for just under 3 hours, but your suit's internal clock shows nearly 6 hours have elapsed. Aria, what's the time discrepancy between the shuttle systems and my suit? You ask, though you suspect you already know the answer. Processing, Commander. Your suit clock indicates a duration 2.87 times longer than the shuttle's chronometer. This is consistent with relativity effects observed near the perimeter of the anomaly. Time dilation. You were experiencing time differently inside the anomaly than the shuttle was recording. The implications are fascinating. Another piece of evidence that fundamental physics operates differently in that region. As you guide the shuttle away from the anomaly, you glance back through the viewport. The region looks different to you now. Where before you saw only strange visual distortions, now you perceive patterns, organization, like reading a familiar language that once appeared as random symbols. They're saying goodbye. You murmur, watching the light configurations shift and change as you withdraw. Commander, nothing, Aria, just talking to myself. The shuttle accelerates, putting distance between you and the anomaly. Part of you already misses the connection you felt with the light entities, a profound communion unlike anything in human experience. Another part feels relief at returning to normal space, to the physics and limitations you understand. You reach up to unseal your helmet, the simple action bringing your attention to your hands. They look the same as always, the same fingers that have typed reports, adjusted equipment, held coffee mugs through years of scientific work. But they feel different somehow, as if they've touched something that has fundamentally changed their relationship to reality. With the helmet removed, you take your first breath of the shuttle's recycled air. It smells of metal and plastic with the faint antiseptic undertone common to all spacecraft. The prosaic scent grounds you, pulling you back toward human reality after your immersion in something far beyond it. Aria, our communications with mission control restored. You ask, setting the helmet aside. What negative, Commander? Communication lag remains significant. Current estimate for two-way communication, 43 hours. You nod absently, already formulating how you'll report what you've discovered. What words can possibly convey the experience? What evidence will satisfy the rigorous demands of scientific verification? You reach into a pocket of your suit and extract the small recording device you brought with you during the EVA. It's a simple camera designed to function without the sophisticated electronics that failed in the anomaly. You're not sure if it captured anything useful, but it's at least a start. As you dock with the main vessel, a wave of exhaustion hits you. The neural stress of communicating with such alien consciousness, the physical demands of the EVA, the sheer magnitude of what you've witnessed it all catches up at once, leaving you drained. Aria, once I'm aboard, I need to rest before beginning full documentation. You say, unable to stifle a yawn. Wake me in 6 hours unless there's an emergency. Acknowledged, Commander. Docking sequence completing. Welcome back. The familiar confines of your ship feel both comforting and strangely limiting after the boundless experience within the anomaly. You move through the repressurization routine, Automatically, your mind still half elsewhere, processing what you've learned. In your quarters, you notice a small plant you brought from Earth, a simple spider plant, in a sealed terrarium. You've hardly paid attention to it during the mission, but now you find yourself staring at it, fascinated by its green vitality, its quiet persistence, so far from its native soil. You reach out to touch one of its leaves, feeling the smooth surface beneath your fingertip. The simple physical sensation, plant matter against human skin, seems profound in a way it never has before. This too is a form of communication between different modes of existence, life recognizing life across the gulf of evolutionary divergence. The realization makes you sink onto your bunk, suddenly overwhelmed. Everything seems connected in ways you never perceived before your encounter with the light entities. Every interaction, every exchange of energy or information exists on a spectrum that includes both the most basic physical reactions and the most profound consciousness sharing you experienced in the anomaly. We're not alone, you whisper to the empty room. We've never been alone. The words hang in the recycled air of your cabin, simple yet carrying the weight of the most significant discovery in human history. Not just evidence of other life, but contact with a form of existence so fundamentally different from our own that it expands the very definition of what it means to be conscious. As sleep begins to claim you, you find yourself absently tugging at your sock, which has once again bunched uncomfortably around your ankle. The mundane discomfort makes you smile. Even after touching the cosmic, you remain stubbornly, gloriously human, limited embodied, bound by physical needs and small irritations. And perhaps you think as consciousness fades that embodied specificity is exactly what made your encounter valuable to the light entities. In a universe of pattern and energy, the peculiar consciousness that arises from flesh might be as exotic to them as their light-based existence is to you. Your last thought before sleep takes you is a question. What will humanity become when it learns it is not alone in thought, not unique in awareness, but part of a vast spectrum of consciousness that spans forms we have yet to even imagine? Commander Martinez, Arya's voice pulls you from a dream so vivid you momentarily can't distinguish it from reality. You are back in the anomaly, but this time, the light entities were showing you Earth as seen through their perception, a swirling pattern of consciousness and energy rather than a physical planet. Commander Martinez, please acknowledge. You sit up, rubbing your eyes. I'm awake, Area. What is it? You ask to be woken after 6 hours. It has been 6 hours and 7 minutes. Thank you. You swing your legs over the edge of the bunk, feeling the slight resistance as your socked feet connect with the floor. The sensation grounds you in physical reality after the disorienting dream. As you reach for the water pouch beside your bed, you notice something odd. Floating in the air near the center of your cabin is a small point of light, not from any of the ship's systems, but a freestanding mote of radiance that hovers perfectly still, defying both gravity and explanation. You freeze water pouch halfway to your lips. Arias, are you detecting any unusual energy signatures in my quarters? Negative, Commander. All readings normal. You set the water aside and slowly stand approaching the point of light with caution. It's small, no larger than a pinhead, but intensely bright without being painful to look at. As you draw closer, it responds to your movement, drifting slightly to maintain the same distance between you. You followed me, you whisper, understanding dawning. Somehow, one of the light entities, or perhaps a small portion of their collective, has accompanied you back to your ship. The point expands slightly, as if acknowledging your recognition. You extend your hand toward it, palm up, and the light descends to hover just above your skin. There's no sensation of heat or energy, just a gentle awareness of presence. How is this possible? You murmur. The physics outside doesn't allow for, but even as you speak, you realize the answer. The light entities exist partially outside normal physical law. Their presence here is no more impossible than their existence in the anomaly just unexpected. Area begin recording. I need to document this. Recording initiated, Commander. For the next hour, you meticulously document the behavior of the light mote, running every test you can think of with the ship's equipment. The results are baffling. Some instruments detect nothing at all, while others register readings that make no sense, as if the light exists partially in normal space and partially elsewhere. It's a bridge, you realize aloud, a connection between our reality and theirs. The light pulses once a brief flare of increased brightness that you interpret as confirmation. You're struck by the implications, not just contact with an alien intelligence, but an ongoing connection, a relationship. You find yourself smiling as you watch the light drift around your cabin, investigating your few personal belongings with what feels like curiosity. There's something endearing about its exploration, like watching a child discover a new environment. Commander, the memory storage in your EVA suit has completed the transferring to the ship's systems. Would you like to review the footage now? Your attention shifts. Yes, display it on the main screen. You move to the small workstation in your quarters, the light mote following you like an attentive pet. The screen flickers to life, showing static at first, then clearing to reveal the interior of the anomaly as your camera recorded it. The footage is nothing like what you experienced, where you saw intricate patterns of frozen light, complex formations that conveyed meaning and intelligence. The camera shows only vague, blurry distortions, barely distinguishable from visual noise. That's not right, you mutter, leaning closer to the screen. That's not what it looked like. But as you watch more of the recording, you begin to understand. The camera captured the physical reality, the actual photons and energy states that existed in that space. What you perceived was something else entirely, the meaning behind the patterns, the consciousness they embodied. It was never about the light itself. The light was merely the medium, the physical manifestation of something that exists primarily as pattern, as information, as awareness. They were speaking directly to my consciousness, you say softly. The visual component was just translation, my brain interpreting a form of communication it wasn't designed to receive. The light mote pulses again, more emphatically this time. You turn to regard it, a new understanding forming. That's why you came with me. The recordings, the data, they won't convey what I experienced. They can't. You're the evidence. The light expands and contracts in what you've come to recognize as an affirmative response. Its presence is the proof not just of the anomaly's existence, but of the intelligent consciousness that inhabits it. But will anyone believe me? You wonder aloud, suddenly doubtful. A single point of light, visible only to me. You glance back at the screen, at the disappointing footage that fails to capture the wonder you experienced. The light mote drifts closer, hovering near your face as if studying your expression. Then, without warning, it multiplies 1 point, becoming 2, then 4, then 8, until dozens of identical motes fill the air around you, arranging themselves in a complex three-dimensional pattern. Aria, you say your voice, barely above a whisper. Are you detecting this? There's a pause before the AI responds longer than its normal processing time. Commander, I am detecting multiple anomalous energy signatures in your quarters. The pattern does not correspond to any known phenomenon in my database. A surge of excitement rushes through you. It's not just in your perception. The light entities are making themselves detectable to the ship's instruments. They're adapting, finding ways to manifest that can be objectively measured. The floating points begin to move in coordinated patterns, forming shapes that remind you of three-dimensional mathematical models. Calabi-Yau manifolds, strange attractors, fractal geometries. It's beautiful and clearly deliberate, a demonstration of intelligence that even the most skeptical observer would have difficulty dismissing. They're showing off. You laugh, delighted by the display. Making sure we can't write this off as instrument malfunction or observer bias. The lights respond to your voice, briefly forming what looks like a sound wave pattern before resuming their mathematical dance. The communication is becoming more sophisticated, more tailored to human understanding. You reach for the granola bar you keep in your desk drawer, suddenly aware of how hungry you are. The simple act of unwrapping the food, of satisfying this basic biological need, feels incongruous amid this profound first contact scenario. Yet it also feels right, a reminder of your humanity, even as you bridge the gap to something utterly non-human. As you chew, watching the lights continue their intricate choreography, a thought occurs to you. Aria, what's our current distance from the anomaly? We are currently 4.7 million kilometers from the anomaly perimeter, Commander. You nod thoughtfully. And has the anomaly changed in any detectable way since we departed? Analyzing. Yes, Commander. The anomaly appears to be exhibiting new behavior patterns. The boundary is fluctuating in ways not previously recorded, and electromagnetic emissions have increased by 27%. Your heart beats faster as you process this information. The light entities aren't just reaching out to you, they're changing their entire mode of existence, becoming more perceptible to human observation. The implications are staggering. We need to transmit this to Earth immediately. You decide, brushing granola crumbs from your fingers. Compress all data and prepare it for maximum priority transmission. Preparing transmission, Commander. However, I must note that communication lag remains significant. Estimated time for the message to reach Earth, 21 hours, 14 minutes. You nod, unsurprised. The distance is vast, and the anomaly still affects surrounding space. Earth feels very far away at this moment, not just in physical distance, but in understanding. How will humanity comprehend what you've discovered? How will this change our perception of our place in the cosmos? The lights seem to sense your thoughts, gathering into a formation that resembles a miniature version of the solar system's sun at center planets in orbit. A reminder of home of context. Yes, you murmur, that's where we're going. That's who needs to know about you. The formation shifts, becoming something less recognizable, a structure that suggests vastness, complexity, connection across great distances. You get the impression they're trying to communicate something about their own nature. There, the formation shifts, becoming something less recognizable, a structure that suggests vastness, complexity, connection across great distances. You get the impression they're trying to communicate something about their own nature, their extension beyond the anomaly you discovered. You're not just here, are you? You ask, understanding dawning. This isn't the only place you exist. The lights pulse in unison, a clear affirmative. Time behaves strangely when you're the first human to establish contact with a non-human intelligence. The hours seem both compressed and expanded, racing by, while simultaneously stretching into what feels like days. You've been documenting the light entity's manifestation in your ship for what your clock says is 14 hours, but your body insists must be much longer. Fatigue tugs at the edges of your consciousness, but adrenaline and wonder keep you alert, unwilling to miss a moment of this historic interaction. Arya, what's the status of our transmission to Earth? You ask, rolling your shoulders to relieve the stiffness. The data packet was transmitted 11 hours ago, Commander. Based on current signal propagation rates, it should reach Earth in approximately 10 hours. You nod, turning your attention back to the lights. Their behavior has evolved dramatically over the hours of observation. What began as simple geometric patterns has developed into increasingly complex representations, models of atomic structures, visualizations of wave functions, recreations of famous mathematical proofs. They're learning your language, not English or any spoken human tongue, but the language of human knowledge, science, mathematics, the frameworks through which humanity has tried to understand the universe. You're going through our history of discovery, you murmur, watching as the lights form a perfect model of DNA's double helix, showing me you understand how we see the world. The formation shifts, becoming something that resembles the standard model of particle physics, then transforms again into what you recognize as string theory, visualizations, vibrating multidimensional filaments that form the most fundamental components of reality. But then the pattern changes to something you don't recognize. Structures more complex, more integrated, suggesting a model of physics beyond anything developed on Earth. Is this your understanding? You ask, leaning forward with intense interest. Your model of how reality works? The lights pulse in affirmation, then elaborate the pattern, further adding dimensions and connections that make your head spin with their complexity. You struggle to comprehend what you're seeing. It's like trying to understand calculus when you've only learned basic arithmetic. I can't. It's beyond me. You admit, rubbing your temples where a headache is forming from the effort of comprehension. The lights immediately simplify their display, returning to more accessible patterns. You get the impression of patience, of teachers willing to proceed at the student's pace. You reach for your coffee pouch, taking a sip of the lukewarm liquid. The mundane action grounds you amid the profound intellectual exchange. Your thumb absently traces the seam of the pouch, feeling the slight ridge where the material is joined. Let's try something else, You suggest setting the coffee aside. Can you show me your history, where you came from, how you evolved? The lights pause as if considering how to respond to this request. Then they begin a new pattern, starting with what appears to be the Big Bang, a central point from which everything expands. But there's something different about this representation, something that doesn't quite match the standard cosmological model. As the visualization progresses, you see what appears to be the emergence of consciousness, not as a late development arising from complex biology, but as a fundamental component of the universe from nearly the beginning. The lights suggest that awareness in some form has existed since the earliest moments of cosmos, emerging first as simple pattern recognition in energy fields, then gradually evolving into more complex forms. Consciousness isn't just an emergent property of complex brains. You breathe understanding dawning. It's more fundamental than that. It's woven into the fabric of reality itself. The lights pulse in agreement, their pattern shifting to show how different forms of consciousness have emerged throughout the universe, some based in matter, like human minds, others existing as patterns in energy fields, still others in forms you can barely comprehend. And you? Where do you fit in this spectrum, you ask? The response is a pattern suggesting both antiquity and complexity. The light entities evolved from some of the earliest consciousness forms in the universe, developing over billions of years into their current state. They exist primarily as patterns in what humans would call quantum fields, using light as merely one way to interact with the material world. You sit back in your chair, overwhelmed by the implications. You're ancient, billions of years old as a species. The lights neither confirm nor deny this directly, instead, showing patterns that suggest the concept of age applies differently to them. Their existence isn't strictly linear, as human life is. They experience time more holistically, more simultaneously. And the anomaly? The dead zone. What is that to you? The response is complex, showing the region as something like an embassy or contact point, a place where their normal mode of existence intersects with conventional space-time in a way that allows for interaction with material beings. Not their home exactly, but a place they've created specifically for communication between different forms of consciousness. You made it. You realize, eyes widening. You engineered a region of space where physics works differently, just so you could talk to beings like us. The lights pulse in what feels like pleased affirmation, expanding briefly before contracting again. You get the impression of something like pride, not arrogance, but satisfaction in a difficult achievement. You find yourself twisting a loose thread on your sleeve, the small repetitive motion helping to process the enormity of what you're learning. These beings have the capability to manipulate the fundamental laws of physics to create spaces where reality itself functions differently. Their level of development makes even humanity's most advanced technology seem primitive by comparison. Have you made contact with other species, other forms of biological intelligence? You ask. The answer comes as a series of representations, different forms of embodied life, some vaguely humanoid, others wildly different from anything on Earth. The implication is clear: humanity is not the first biological species they've communicated with, nor likely the last. Are any of them still around? Could we meet them too? The response is ambiguous. Some civilizations continue to exist, others have gone extinct through natural processes or self destruction. Distance is also a factor. Many are so far from Earth that meaningful contact would be challenging even with advanced technology. You nod, processing this information. The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine, and yet perhaps less lonely than we feared. A timer beeps softly, reminding you that you've been awake far too long. Basic human needs assert themselves. Hunger, fatigue, the pressure of your bladder. Even in the midst of this cosmic revelation, your body demands attention. I need to rest. You tell the lights, standing with a stretch that makes your joints pop. Human bodies require cycles of sleep and wakefulness. I'll return soon. The lights form a pattern that somehow conveys understanding and patience. They've existed for eons. They can wait a few hours for you to sleep. In the small bathroom attached to your quarters, you splash water on your face, staring at your reflection in the mirror. You look different somehow, not physically, but in your eyes. There's a depth there that wasn't present before a perspective shifted by what you've witnessed. I'm the same person, you tell your reflection, not entirely convinced, just with new understanding. As you settle onto your bunk, you realize the light entities have dimmed their radiance, creating a gentle twilight conducive to sleep. The consideration in this gesture, adapting to your human needs, touches you unexpectedly. Thank you, you murmur as your eyes grow heavy. Just before sleep claims you, you notice your left sock has come partially off, bunched around your toes. The minor discomfort is strangely reassuring, a reminder that despite communing with ancient cosmic intelligences, you remain stubbornly, wonderfully human. You wake to Arya's voice, pulling you from dreams filled with patterns of light and cosmic revelations. Commander Martinez, incoming transmission from Earth. Priority Alpha. You sit up, momentarily disoriented. The light entities are still present in your quarters, though they've gathered into a compact formation near the ceiling, pulsing slowly like a collective heartbeat. They seem to have entered some kind of rest state during your sleep. Display the message. You instruct, running a hand through your hair in a futile attempt to tame it. The screen on your workstation activates, showing the anxious face of Director Chen, head of the mission control team. Her expression is a mixture of concern, excitement, and disbelief. Commander Martinez, we've received your data transmission. To say it's caused a stir would be an understatement. She pauses, composing herself. The evidence you've provided of intelligent, non-human consciousness is, well, it's unprecedented. The scientific community is in an uproar. Some are calling it the most significant discovery in human history. You glance at the light formation, which has begun to stir, responding to your wakefulness. It is, you confirm simply. However, Chen continues, her expression growing more serious. There are concerns, security concerns. The potential implications for Earth's safety cannot be overstated. We are instructing you to maintain your current distance from the anomaly and to take all possible precautions with any manifestations you're experiencing. You suppress a smile at her careful phrasing. The lights have now fully awakened, spreading out once more into more complex patterns. The light entities pose no threat, Director, you reply. They've had countless opportunities to harm me if that was their intention. Their actions suggest nothing but curiosity and a desire for peaceful exchange. Chen nods, though she doesn't look entirely convinced. That may be, Commander, but we're dealing with something completely outside our experience. The President has been briefed, and an international scientific and security consortium is being formed to address this discovery. You are to provide hourly updates and follow all safety protocols. Understood. You respond, though you feel a twinge of frustration at the fear underlying her instructions. What about the new data I've gathered since the initial transmission? They've been communicating continuously, showing me aspects of their existence, their understanding of physics, their history. Suggests send everything. Chen interrupts her professional demeanor, momentarily giving way to naked, scientific curiosity. Every scrap of data you can gather. This is. She searches for words. This changes everything, Commander. You nod, feeling the weight of your position as humanity's first ambassador to this ancient consciousness. I'll prepare a comprehensive update immediately. One more thing, Chen adds, her expression softening slightly. The team wants you to know they're proud of you, Ethan. Whatever happens next, you've made history. The use of your first name, unusual in official communications, touches you unexpectedly. Thank you, Director. Martinez out. As the screen goes dark, you turn to the light entities, which have formed a pattern reminiscent of your solar system. Well, you say with a small smile, it seems you've caused quite a stir back home. The lights pulse in what you've come to interpret as amusement or satisfaction. They rearrange themselves to show what appears to be the transmission path between your ship and Earth, then form a question pattern seeking information about the response. They're excited, you explain, but also frightened. It's human nature to fear what we don't understand. You pause, considering how to convey complex human emotions to these beings. We've spent our history alone in the cosmos as far as we knew. Learning we're not alone is profound, especially when the other consciousness is so different from our own. The lights respond with a pattern suggesting comprehension, then shift to show something new, a representation of what looks like communication between different entities. The meaning becomes clear. They're showing you that they too had to learn to communicate with other forms of consciousness to bridge gaps of understanding. You've done this before, you say. First contact with different types of awareness. The pattern confirms this, elaborating to show multiple instances across vast timescales. You get the impression that the light entities serve as something like mediators or translators between radically different forms of consciousness throughout the cosmos. You're cosmic diplomats. You suggest, reaching for your water pouch. As you take a sip, you notice your hand is perfectly steady despite the enormity of what you're discussing. There's a calmness that has settled over you since the initial contact, a perspective that makes even this historic situation feel somehow natural, as if you were always meant to be here having this conversation. The lights form a pattern that somehow conveys both agreement and modest demurral. Yes, they facilitate connections between different consciousnesses, but without the formal structures implied by human concepts like diplomat. You nod, understanding. Human frameworks don't quite fit their existence. You've been trying to understand them through familiar concepts, diplomats, teachers, archivists, but there's something else entirely, something for which you have no ready category. I need to document more of what you've shown me, you say, turning to your workstation, for the transmission to Earth. The lights pulse in acknowledgement, then form a new pattern more complex, more detailed than anything they've shown before. It's a representation of what looks like a network stretching across vast distances, connecting different points throughout the galaxy. What is this? You ask, leaning forward with interest. The response comes as a series of impressions rather than a clear visual answer. You sense they're showing you something about their true nature, not just the localized manifestations you've been interacting with, but their larger existence as a kind of distributed consciousness that spans enormous distances. You're connected. You breathe understanding dawning. Not just the entities here, but everywhere. A network of awareness stretching across. How far? The pattern expands, suggesting a scale that encompasses significant portions of the galaxy, possibly beyond. The light entities exist as a kind of vast, interconnected web of consciousness, using quantum entanglement or some similar phenomenon to maintain unity across distances that would make conventional communication impossible. You sit back, momentarily overwhelmed by the implications. You're in multiple places simultaneously, multiple regions like the anomaly I discovered. The pattern confirms this, then shifts to show something new, a representation that somehow suggests the entities are not just observers of the cosmos, but actively involved in various ways, subtly influencing development without direct intervention. Spake guides, you murmur, watching, connecting, occasionally nudging when necessary. The concept resonates with various human myths, guardian angels, hidden teachers, watchers from beyond, but grounded in a very real, if utterly alien form of existence. You're about to ask another question when Area interrupts. Commander sensors are detecting unusual activity in the anomaly. The boundary is changing. You turn your attention to the main monitor as Area displays the sensor readings. The anomaly is indeed transforming, not growing or shrinking exactly, but shifting its properties. The region where light stops is becoming more structured, more defined. They're making it more visible, you realize, glancing at the light entities. More detectable to our instruments. The lights pulse in confirmation, forming a pattern that suggests deliberate action, preparation for wider contact. They're making themselves more accessible to human observation, adapting their manifestation to be more easily studied and understood. You're getting ready to meet the rest of us, you say softly. Not just me, but humanity as a whole. The pattern shifts again, becoming something that conveys both anticipation and patience. They've existed for eons. They're in no rush. But yes, they're preparing for expanded contact with your species. You find yourself absently arranging small objects on your desk, a pen, a data chip, a spare connector into a pattern that mimics the formations you've been observing. The unconscious mirroring makes you smile when you notice it. I should warn you, you say, half joking, we're a complicated species, brilliant and foolish kind, and cruel, visionary and short-sighted. Sometimes all in the same individual. The lights respond with a pattern suggesting something like fond amusement they know. They've been observing humanity for longer than you might be comfortable knowing. They understand your contradictions, your struggles, your potential. You take a deep breath, suddenly aware of your role in this historic moment. You are the bridge, the first thread in what might become a lasting connection between humanity and these ancient cosmic beings. What you say, how you represent your species, could influence the relationship for generations to come. We have a lot to learn from you, you say carefully. But perhaps there are things you might learn from us as well. Different perspectives, different ways of experiencing reality. The lights form a pattern of enthusiastic agreement. That's precisely why they seek contact with biological consciousnesses to exchange perspectives to understand modes of awareness different from their own. The diversity of consciousness throughout the cosmos is to them its most precious feature. As you begin documenting these new revelations for transmission to Earth, you notice a small pattern of lights has broken off from the main group and is investigating your quarters with what can only be described as curiosity, examining your few personal possessions, the structure of your living space, the small plant still growing in its terrarium. The sight fills you with an unexpected warmth. For all their cosmic vastness, their ancient wisdom, the light entities retain something essential that humans would recognize: wonder, curiosity, the desire to understand what is different from oneself. Perhaps you think as your fingers fly across the interface, encoding your observations for humanity to share, we're not so incomprehensibly different after all. The days that follow blur together in a continuous exchange of information. Earth's response to your discovery has been overwhelming, a flood of questions, instructions, and requests from scientists, government officials, and military strategists. Everyone wants to understand the light entities, to categorize them according to human frameworks that simply don't apply. No director, they don't have what we would recognize as a governmental structure. You explain during your daily briefing with Mission Control. Their organization is more organic, distributed, consensus-based. Chen sighs, visibly frustrated, even across the vast distance. The communication lag has decreased as the anomaly's effects have stabilized, allowing for something closer to real-time conversation. The Security Council needs answers, Commander. They want to know chain of command decision-making processes, technological capabilities. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. I understand the concerns, but we're dealing with a form of existence so different from our own that many of these questions are like asking about the political opinions of ocean currents. They just don't apply. Behind you, the light entities have formed a pattern that somehow conveys amusement without any human facial expressions or sounds. They've been present for all your communications, with Earth observing learning about human interactions and social structures. Do your best, Commander, Chen says finally. The first contact team is being assembled. Estimated departure in 3 weeks. Your mission is to maintain communication and continue gathering data until they arrive. Understood, you reply, ending the transmission with a sigh. You turn to the light entities. Sorry about that. Some of my species is having trouble adjusting to the idea of consciousness without hierarchical organization. The lights form a response pattern suggesting understanding and patience. They've encountered similar reactions from other biological species, the tendency to project familiar structures onto the unfamiliar. We'll get there eventually. You assure them, though part of you wonders if that's true. Humanity's history of encountering the other doesn't exactly inspire confidence. You stretch, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders from hours at the communications station. Your body reminds you of its needs with a rumble from your stomach. Even amid cosmic revelations, biological imperatives continue their steady demands. As you prepare a meal from the ship's stores, rehydrated pasta with synthetic protein that approximates the taste of chicken, you reflect on how much you've learned in the past days. The light entities have shown you glimpses of countless civilizations across the galaxy, different forms of consciousness, with their own unique perspectives on existence. Some are biological, like humans, others based in plasma or energy fields, still others existing as distributed networks through various media. It's like a cosmic ecosystem of awareness. You muse aloud, stirring your pasta thoughtfully. Different forms of consciousness filling different niches, each with their own way of perceiving and interacting with reality. The lights form a pattern of enthusiastic agreement. This diversity is precisely what they value, what they work to preserve and connect across the vast distances of space and the gulfs of understanding. You take your meal back to the workstation, balancing the bowl carefully in the ship's artificial gravity. A strand of pasta escapes your fork and dangles momentarily before you catch it with your lips. The small, mundane action, a counterpoint to the profound exchange of cosmic philosophy. There's something I've been wondering, you say between bites. The way back, how do we find others like you? Are there signs we could look for ways to detect regions similar to the anomaly? The light entities respond with a complex pattern, suggesting that such regions exist throughout the galaxy, often near what humans would call cosmic strings or other unusual space-time features. They provide what appears to be a set of detection parameters, specific radiation signatures, gravitational patterns, and quantum field fluctuations that might indicate their presence. You quickly document these, knowing they'll be invaluable to astronomers on Earth. This could open up a whole network of contact points. You murmur, excitement building, a map of consciousness across the galaxy. The lights pulse in what you've come to recognize as their version of enthusiasm, elaborating the pattern to show something like a cosmic communication network, not technology, as humans would understand it, but a system of awareness sharing that spans vast distances. You're inviting us to join this, you realize, as setting your fork down, to become part of this consciousness collective. The response is nuanced, not exactly a yes, but a suggestion of possibility. Humanity isn't ready yet, the pattern implies. There's development needed, evolution of understanding and perspective. But someday, perhaps, the implications leave you momentarily speechless. You stare at your half-eaten pasta, the everyday object suddenly seeming strange in the context of this cosmic conversation. We have a long way to go, you acknowledge finally. But knowing this exists, having this goal to work toward it, changes everything. You spend the next several hours documenting the detection parameters, creating visualizations and explanations that scientists on Earth will be able to understand and implement. If your species can locate other contact points, establish communication with the light entities in multiple locations, the potential for advancement is staggering. It's late in the ship's cycle when you finally pause fatigue, making your vision blur slightly. You've been pushing yourself hard, trying to absorb and document as much as possible before the arrival of the contact team. Part of you worries about what will happen and how military personnel and government officials might approach these beings with their agendas and preconceptions. I should rest, you tell the light entities rubbing your eyes. Human brains need downtime to process information. As has become their habit, the lights dim and gather into a more compact formation, allowing you the darkness needed for sleep. You've grown accustomed to their presence, finding comfort in the soft glow that remains like a nightlight, keeping cosmic darkness at bay. In your narrow bunk, you find yourself staring at the ceiling, mind still racing despite your fatigue. The path back to normal human existence seems increasingly hard to imagine. How do you return to everyday life after experiencing the cosmos through the perspective of beings who exist across vast scales of space and time? You roll onto your side, punching your pillow into a more comfortable shape. As you do, you notice something unusual, a small pattern of light hovering near your personal effects, specifically near the photograph of your family you keep beside your bunk. Are you curious about them? You ask softly. The light pulses once in acknowledgement. You sit up, taking the photograph in hand. It shows you with your parents and sister at your graduation from the Space Academy, all smiling proudly. A moment of human joy frozen in time. This is my family, you explain, feeling strangely vulnerable. The people I'm connected to by biology and shared experience. They helped shape who I am. You pause, wondering how to explain human kinship to beings who exist as a distributed consciousness. It's a different kind of connection than what you experience, but it's fundamental to our existence as humans. The light forms a pattern suggesting understanding, then shifts to show what appears to be different types of connections. Not just human familial bonds, but symbiotic relationships between different species, the interdependence of organisms and ecosystems, the subtle links between stars in a cluster, the quantum entanglement of particles across vast distances. It's all connection. You breathe, understanding the point they're making. Different forms, different scales, but fundamentally the same principle, entities affecting and being affected by each other. The pattern pulses in confirmation, then expands to show something larger, the vast web of causal relationships that constitutes the universe itself, everything connected to everything else, in an incomprehensibly complex network of influence and interaction. You find yourself reaching out to touch the light pattern, though you know your hand will pass through it. We're all part of this, aren't we? Not separate from it, but woven into it. The response is the strongest affirmation you've received, yet a brilliant pulse that briefly illuminates your entire cabin. This is the core of their understanding, the foundation of their existence, the recognition of the fundamental connectedness of all things, all awareness, all being. You lie back down, the photograph still in your hand, feeling simultaneously tiny and vast. Your human life, your specific experiences, relationships, thoughts, is just one node in an infinite network of consciousness and causality. Yet that specificity, that uniqueness is precisely what makes your perspective valuable in the cosmic conversation. Thank you, you whisper to the light entities as sleep finally begins to claim you, for showing me the way back to everything. Commander Martinez, we're detecting another vessel approaching our position. Aria's announcement pulls you from deep concentration. You've been working with the light entities on developing a translation framework, a system that might allow for more direct communication between their consciousness and human understanding. Another vessel, you repeat confused. The contact team isn't due for at least 2 more weeks. Correct, Commander. This is not the scheduled contact team. The vessel does not match any known Earth registry. Your heart rate spikes as the implications hit you. Show me. The main screen activates, displaying a distant object moving steadily toward your position. The ship's sensors struggle to get a clear reading. The vessel seems to absorb or deflect most scanning attempts. Not from Earth, you murmur, turning to the light entities. Is this one of yours? The lights form a pattern indicating negative response, then shift to suggest something else: recognition, but not ownership or creation. They know what this is, but it's not their vessel. Arya, maintain position and continue monitoring. Open a standard greeting channel on all frequencies. Acknowledged, Commander. You study the approaching vessel as more details become visible. Its design is utterly alien, not just different from human spacecraft, but seemingly constructed according to principles that challenge your understanding of engineering. The hull, if it can be called, that appears to shift and flow like liquid while maintaining structural integrity. Distance to unknown vessel, you ask, never taking your eyes from the screen. Approximately 700,000 kilometers and closing, Arya responds. Estimated intercept in 47 minutes at current velocity. The light entities have formed a new pattern near you, something that conveys both excitement and caution. They clearly know who or what is approaching. Are they like you ask? Another form of consciousness. The response is complex affirmation mixed with qualification. Yes, another form of consciousness, but very different from the light entities. The pattern suggests something biological, yet not carbon-based, a species that evolved in environments humans would find completely hostile. Another spacefaring civilization. You breathe the reality of what's happening washing over you. Not only have you made contact with the light entities, but now you're about to encounter an entirely different alien species, one with physical technology spacecraft, presumably a society. You reach for your coffee mug, needing the familiar comfort of the routine action. Your hand trembles slightly as you bring the mug to your lips, the enormity of the moment finally hitting you. You, Ethan Martinez, are about to become the first human to make contact with not one, but 2 different alien intelligences. Commander, the vessel is accelerating, Area announces. New intercept estimate 22 minutes. You set down your mug, taking a deep breath to center yourself. Continue broadcasting greetings. Maintain current position. The light entities form a new pattern, one suggesting communication mediation. They position themselves between you and the main screen, forming shapes that seem to be preparing for some kind of interaction. You're going to help, aren't you? You realize. Facilitate communication between us. The pattern confirms this, elaborating to show what appears to be a three-way connection, light entities, linking your consciousness with whatever intelligence controls the approaching vessel. Thank you, you say, simply grateful for their assistance in what could otherwise be an impossible task of cross-species communication. As the vessel draws closer, more details become visible. What you initially took for a hull is something more complex, a semi-transparent membrane containing what appears to be a churning plasma-like substance. The entire structure pulses with rhythmic motions that suggest life processes rather than mechanical operations. It's alive, you murmur. The ship itself is alive, or at least partially biological. The light entities pulse in conformation, forming patterns that suggest this species evolved in the coronas of stars, developing biology based on plasma rather than carbon compounds. Their technology is a blend of evolved biological adaptations and deliberately cultivated modifications, like a cross between a spacecraft and a living organism. Commander, the vessel is initiating some form of energy transmission directed at our ship, area reports. Parameters do not match any known communication protocol. Before you can respond, the light entities flare brightly, intercepting the transmission. They form rapidly shifting patterns, exchanging information at a rate your eyes can barely track. They're communicating with the plasma beings, you realize, establishing contact before direct interaction with you. After several minutes of this light-based exchange, the entities reform into a pattern suggesting readiness. They've prepared the way, explained your nature to the visitors, and vice versa. The plasma vessel has now stopped at a distance of approximately 10,000 kilometers close in cosmic terms, but maintaining a respectful separation. A tendril of energy extends from it, reaching toward your ship, but stopping short of making contact. The light entities position themselves between you and this tendril, forming a bridge of patterns. You understand instinctively they're creating a translation layer, a means for your consciousness to interact with the plasma beings. I'm ready, you tell them, setting aside your tablet and focusing completely on the patterns before you. The experience that follows defies easy description. Through the light entity's mediation, you perceive, sense, feel the consciousness of the plasma beings, utterly alien yet recognizably aware. Their thought processes move in spiral patterns rather than linear progressions, and their perception of time differs dramatically from yours. To them, a second is a vast expanse, while centuries are comprehensible as unified events. They greet you with curiosity and something like respect, recognition of your awareness, despite the profound differences in your forms. Communication happens not in words, but in shared concepts, impressions that form directly in your understanding. You learn they are called the closest approximation in human language, the Heliosapiens. They evolved in the plasma sea of stellar coronas, developing awareness over millions of years, of riding magnetic field lines and solar wind currents. Their experience of the universe is primarily tactile and electromagnetic rather than visual or auditory. They've known of the light entities for eons, occasionally interacting when their journey brings them near a contact point, like the anomaly. And now, through the light entities network, they've learned of humanity a new form of consciousness to add to their understanding of the cosmic diversity of awareness. We are honored to meet you. You convey through the light bridge, struggling to form concepts that will translate across the vast gulf of different experiences. Humanity would welcome knowledge exchange with your kind. The response comes as a swirl of impressions, suggesting both amusement and agreement. The Heliosapiens perceive humans as fascinatingly constrained, bound to narrow temperature ranges, limited wavelengths of perception, and fixed physical forms. Yet they also recognize the unique perspective. These limitations create the particular way humans have developed to understand the universe through these constraints. You find yourself smiling despite the intensity of the exchange. There's something profoundly humbling yet uplifting about this encounter. The recognition that consciousness can develop in forms so radically different from your own, yet still reach across that difference to establish meaningful contact. The communication continues for what Arya later tells you was nearly 3 hours, though subjectively it felt both shorter and longer. You learn about the Heliosapiens' journey. They are explorers traveling between stars to study different stellar environments and occasionally encounter other forms of awareness. They've mapped hundreds of star systems over thousands of years, accumulating knowledge that they somehow store in the very structure of their plasma bodies. In turn, you share information about Earth human history and your species' first steps into space exploration. The concepts often require extensive translation by the light entities, as ideas like ocean or forest have no direct equivalents in the experience of beings evolved in stellar plasma. When the exchange finally concludes, you slump back in your chair physically and mentally exhausted yet exhilarated. The Heliosapiens vessel begins to withdraw its mission of contact, complete for now. They've left you with an invitation, coordinates for a star system where more of their kind can be found should humanity ever develop the means to travel such distances. Thank you, you tell the light entities as the plasma ship recedes into the distance. For making that possible, they respond with a pattern suggesting satisfaction and purpose. This is precisely their role in the cosmos, facilitating understanding between different forms of consciousness. Today's encounter is just one of countless connections they've helped forge across billions of years. You run your hand through your hair, feeling the slightly greasy texture, a small human detail amid these cosmic exchanges. You've been so focused on the communication that you've neglected your own physical needs. When did you last shower, eat a proper meal? The thought makes you laugh quietly. Here you are, making historic first contact with multiple alien intelligences, and you're worried about your personal. You run your hand through your hair, feeling the slightly greasy texture, a small human detail amid these cosmic exchanges. You've been so focused on the communication that you've neglected your own physical needs. When did you last shower, eat a proper meal? The thought makes you laugh quietly. Here you are, making historic first contact with multiple alien intelligences, and you're worried about your personal hygiene. The juxtaposition of the cosmic and the mundane strikes you as perfectly emblematic of the human condition. Arya, prepare a full report of the encounter for transmission to Earth. You instruct finally standing from your station. Include all sensor data and my recorded observations. Preparing report, Commander. Estimated completion in 17 minutes. You stretch, feeling tension, release from muscles that have been still for too long. I'm going to take a quick shower before reviewing the report. Under the warm spray of water, a precious resource carefully recycled aboard your ship, you try to process the implications of what just happened. Humanity is not alone in the universe, not by a long shot. There are forms of consciousness so different from your own that communication requires intermediaries. The cosmos is teeming with awareness in forms you never imagined possible, and somehow, through cosmic coincidence, or divine plan, or statistical inevitability, you have become the nexus for humanity's entry into this wider community of minds. As you towel off, catching a glimpse of your all-too-human body in the mirror, a profound thought strikes you. The path back to normal existence, to life, as you knew it before, this mission has vanished. You have crossed a threshold from which there is no return, not just for yourself, but for your entire species. Earth is visible on your main view screen, a blue marble suspended in the void, growing larger as your ship approaches. After 6 months in deep space, the sight of your home planet stirs complicated emotions. It looks simultaneously more fragile and more precious than when you left, your perspective forever altered by what you've experienced. Final approach vector confirmed. Area announces. Earth orbital station docking in approximately 47 minutes. You nod, eyes never leaving the screen. Thank you, Arya. Beside you, a small cluster of light entities hovers near your shoulder. Most of their collective returned to the anomaly. What you now understand is one of many contact points throughout the galaxy, but a few chose to accompany you back to Earth. Representatives, ambassadors, witnesses to humanity's first steps into the wider cosmic community of consciousness. It's beautiful, isn't it? You say to them, though you know they don't perceive visual beauty as humans do. All that life, all that awareness bundled together on one small planet. The lights form a pattern suggesting agreement, but with a different emphasis. They perceive Earth not primarily as a physical body, but as a nexus of consciousness, a brilliant node in the cosmic network of awareness. To them, the billions of minds on that blue sphere form a complex dynamic pattern more interesting than its oceans or mountains. The weeks since your encounter with the Heliosapiens have been a whirlwind of preparation. Earth's response to your transmissions about the second contact was even more frantic than the first, the undeniable proof that the galaxy contains multiple intelligent species has upended human civilization's understanding of its place in the cosmos. The originally planned contact team was scrapped in favor of a more comprehensive approach. You're returning to a world fundamentally changed by the knowledge you've sent ahead, a world preparing for its formal entrance into a community of awareness that spans the galaxy. Your communications console chimes with an incoming transmission. Commander Martinez, this is Earth Orbital Station. We have you on approach. Be advised that your reception committee is ready and, quite extensive. You smile at the understatement in the controller's voice. Understood, EOS. Standard docking procedures. Affirmative. And Commander, There's a pause. On behalf of everyone here, thank you. The simple words catch you off guard, bringing unexpected moisture to your eyes. Just doing my job, you reply, though you both know that's absurdly inadequate. As your ship makes its final approach to the station, you take a moment to straighten your uniform and smooth back your hair. First impressions matter, even when you're returning rather than arriving, especially when you're accompanied by representatives of an ancient cosmic intelligence. The light entities seem to sense your nervous anticipation, forming patterns that somehow convey reassurance. They've observed enough human interaction through you to understand the significance of this moment. I know, you say with a small smile. In the grand cosmic scheme, this is just one tiny event. But for us, it's historic. The docking proceeds smoothly the ship's systems, connecting with the stations the gentle shudder as airlocks align and seal. After months in your self-contained vessel, the thought of stepping into a larger space of breathing air cycled through a much bigger system feels strangely intimidating. Docking complete, area announces. Airlock pressurization in progress. You take a deep breath, centering yourself. Well, you say to both Aria and the light entities, this is it. The airlock door slides open to reveal a reception area filled with more people than you expected: scientists, government officials, military personnel, and surprisingly a small group who must be your family, standing slightly apart from the official welcome committee. For a moment, no one speaks. All eyes are fixed not on you, but on the light entities hovering near your shoulder, the physical proof of everything you've reported. Then the silence breaks as Director Chen steps forward, her usual composure momentarily cracked by genuine awe. Commander Martinez, welcome home. You step through the airlock, feeling the subtle difference in gravity, the station's artificial field slightly stronger than your ship's. Thank you, Director. I'm pleased to report mission complete with some unexpected developments. A ripple of nervous laughter runs through the assembled group. The understatement is almost absurd, given what you've brought back with you. Commander, so a tall man in a formal suit steps forward, the Secretary General of the United Nations, you realize with surprise. On behalf of all humanity, I welcome our visitors and extend our profound gratitude to you for establishing this historic contact. The light entities respond by forming a pattern that suggests acknowledgement and greeting a simple geometric shape that slowly rotates, visible to everyone in the room. A collective gasp rises from the assembled officials. They understand us, you explain, slipping naturally into the role of translator. Not our words exactly, but our intentions, our consciousness. And with time and effort, we're learning to understand them. What follows is a blur of introductions, explanations, and barely contained excitement from the scientific contingent. You find yourself automatically reaching for your collar to adjust it, the familiar nervous gesture grounding you amid the swirl of activity. Eventually, there's a break in the official proceedings, and you're allowed a few moments with your family. Your mother embraces you tightly, tears streaming down her face. My son, the alien ambassador, she whispers, half laughing, half crying. Not exactly how I planned my career, you reply, returning her embrace. Your father, always more reserved, simply grips your shoulder tightly. Proud of you, Ethan. The whole world is. Your sister punches your arm lightly. Way to overachieve, bro. The rest of us just have regular jobs, but you had to go and change human history. The light entities observe this family reunion with apparent interest, forming patterns that suggest they're analyzing the emotional connections, the unspoken communication that happens through touch and expression. Human relationships, the complex web of love obligation, history, and genetic connection fascinate them as much as their cosmic awareness fascinates you. All too soon, you're pulled back into official duties. There will be debriefings, press conferences, endless scientific sessions. You are the bridge between humanity and these cosmic intelligences, the translator of concepts across an almost unfathomable gulf of different experiences. Late that night, finally alone in the quarters assigned to you on the station, you stand at the viewport looking down at Earth. The planet's night side faces you, city lights tracing human civilization across the darkness like a constellation of earthbound stars. The light entities form a pattern beside you, sharing your contemplation of the view. Everything's going to change now, you say softly. For all of us, the pattern shifts to suggest agreement, but with nuance change, yes, but also continuity. Humanity will remain human even as it expands its understanding to include awareness of other consciousnesses. The light entities have seen this process unfold with other species, the gradual integration of the cosmic perspective into a culture's self-conception. It's a lot of responsibility. You continue more to yourself than to them. Being the first, the translator, the bridge. The lights respond with a pattern suggesting distributed effort. You won't bear this burden alone. Already other humans are beginning to establish their own connections with the light entities, finding their own ways to communicate across the consciousness gulf. What began with you will expand, become more robust, more diverse in its expressions. You nod, feeling some of the weight lift from your shoulders. You're right. This is bigger than any one person. You turn away from the viewport, suddenly aware of your fatigue. It's been an overwhelmingly intense day, and tomorrow promises more of the same. As you prepare for sleep, removing your shoes and socks with slow, deliberate movements, you notice the light entities have formed a new pattern, something that suggests sleep or rest, a quieting of active processes. You need downtime too, huh? You ask with a small smile. I guess some things are universal. The pattern pulses once in acknowledgement, before dimming to a soft glow that hovers near the ceiling, present but unobtrusive, allowing you darkness for sleep. As you lie in bed, staring up at the faint luminescence, your mind drifts to all that has happened since you first encountered the anomaly. You've touched minds with beings that exist as patterns of light. You've witnessed the birth of communication between utterly different forms of consciousness. You've helped humanity take its first steps into a vastly larger community of awareness than anyone imagined existed. Yet for all the cosmic significance of these events, you find yourself thinking of smaller things. The taste of real coffee that you'll enjoy tomorrow, the feel of your mother's embrace, the simple pleasure of standing on solid ground beneath a blue sky. The human details that the light entities find so fascinating, so unique to your form of embodied consciousness. Should we bring something to the conversation too? You murmur, sleep beginning to claim you. our particularity, our specificity, our human way of being aware. The light pulses softly in agreement as you drift into dreams, dreams that now encompass not just human concerns, but cosmic perspectives, bridges between different forms of consciousness, and the infinite diversity of awareness that fills the universe. Far away in what humans call the dead zone, countless points of light continue their ancient patterns, newly enriched by connection with your species. And throughout the galaxy, at other contact points, other forms of consciousness prepare to meet the newcomers, the latest voice in a conversation that has continued for billions of years and will continue for billions more. You sleep a single human mind temporarily at rest, but the conversation continues growing, spreading, connecting a network of awareness that spans the stars and bridges the profound differences between all the many ways of being conscious in this vast and wondrous cosmos. The universe has never been empty. The voids between stars, the darkness that seems to separate world from world, galaxy from galaxy. These spaces have always been filled with awareness, with patterns of consciousness that human senses weren't designed to perceive. Until now, as you drift toward sleep, the boundaries between your mind and the larger cosmos begin to blur, not in confusion, but in connection. The light entity's presence reminds you that consciousness itself may be the fundamental reality, not matter, not energy, but awareness. The universe experiencing itself through countless forms, countless perspectives, in an eternal conversation of being. Your breathing slows, deepens. Your thoughts grow quieter, more diffuse. The light entity's glow seems to pulse in rhythm with your heartbeat, a gentle synchronization of entirely different modes of existence. The mission that began as a scientific investigation into an anomaly has become something far more profound, a first step into a community of minds that spans the galaxy, perhaps the universe itself. Humanity will never again see the cosmos as empty or itself as alone. And you, Ethan Martinez, human scientist explorer, bridge builder, find yourself exactly where you need to be at the threshold between what was and what will be, helping to guide your species into a future broader and more wondrous than anyone ever imagined. Your consciousness slips into the borderlands of sleep, where reality and dreams intermingle. And as it does, you feel something that might be the light entity's equivalent of a benediction, a pattern forming not in the room, but in your mind. A final thought before rest takes you. The way back was never about returning unchanged, but about bringing what you've discovered into the future you'll help create. Sleep well, cosmic voyager. Tomorrow awaits.